So, we need to talk about Microsoft. Hey folks, my name's Graham. I am a variety streamer over at twitch.tv/Graham Plays, and I also run this YouTube channel where I talk about anything in the games industry which happens to catch my eye. This week, I want to talk about Microsoft, and also by association a little bit about Sony, but mostly Microsoft. So Microsoft announced last week that MLB The Show, more or less the only simulation style baseball game that gets made, is coming to Xbox Game Pass day and date, day one, which you can basically read as if it's free on Xbox, more or less. That is the same thing. If you own an Xbox and don't own Game Pass, I don't know what kind of fucking freak of nature you are, but I don't really want to know either. So basically free on Xbox. This is significant because up until last year, MLB The Show was a Sony exclusive. More than that, it's actually made by Sony. It's developed by Sony Santa Monica. It's a first party Sony game, which is going to not only be coming out on Xbox, but it's going to be basically free as well. What the fuck? So let's rewind a little bit. It's been common knowledge for a while now that MLB The Show was always going multi-platform, and generally the reaction to this I think was kind of okay. It sort of makes business sense that they would want it to go multi-platform. It's, as I say, the only baseball game really out there, so it'd be weird if like Madden or NBA 2K was platform exclusive, so it makes sense, and Sony would still make money from sales on other platforms because they develop the game, so I don't think people batted too much of an eyelid about it. But the fact that Xbox came out and were like, we're basically fucking giving it away for free on our platform, which they would have had to pay, presumably the MLB who are publishing it on Xbox for, it just like, it feels like a massive just fuck you to Sony. So I found that interesting. I wanted to talk about it a little bit. It's the latest in a kind of line of blows that I think Microsoft have dealt Sony recently. You know, there's been other things like Microsoft purchasing Bethesda, bringing all Bethesda's games out on Game Pass, including EA Access in the Game Pass deal as well. So the overall point being that Microsoft are doing a lot of good work, and generally I think with Game Pass they're changing the way that people buy and play games. It's becoming increasingly hard for me to justify paying full price for a game on PlayStation when I know I could just get an Xbox and play it for basically free. I really like my PlayStation, and that's the kind of ecosystem that I live in, but I don't know, man, I'm fucking saving for a house. Like, spending 60 quid on something that I don't really need to, it's not feeling great right now. And then you look at the other side of the fence and look at what Sony have been doing recently. What have they been coming out and saying? Oh, we're closing the old fucking PSN stores, so all those games that existed digitally on those platforms are dead now. Bye bye. Like, what? Come on, man. I think the reason that I find it so alarming is it kind of feels like there's an air of arrogance about it on Sony's part. As I say, Microsoft are making big moves and really trying to change the face of the industry, I think. And Sony are kind of just pretending like none of it's happening. They're not really doing anything. It gives me PS3 era Sony vibes, where after the PS2 they were the market leader by a fucking country mile, and they thought, oh, we're fucking PlayStation, we don't need to fucking do anything, people will get a second job to buy our consoles, is literally what they said. And they announced their fucking PS3 at $600 US, which is still a fucking famous meme to this day. It's not quite that bad at this stage, but it kind of feels like either they've not got a fucking clue what they're doing, or they're in that mindset again of, we are PlayStation. And to be honest with you, with some of the stuff that Jim Ryan's come out and said recently, I think I'm erring towards the side of not a fucking clue what they're doing. But the purpose of this is not kind of for me to slate Sony, because there is a devil's advocate to be played here, and I want to present that side of the argument as well. So even though Microsoft have been doing all this work, I mean, they spent what, $7 billion or something like that on Bethesda. That's a fucking lot of money. It's more money than Sony could fork out on any one company, because Microsoft are obviously a much larger company than Sony, but they're making a lot of moves and doing a lot of positive things. So you might think that the sales of the new consoles would reflect that, and that Microsoft would be eating up ground on Sony and the tide would be starting to turn. That's not really what the sales figures suggest. From the research I've done, a lot of the sales figures that are out there right now are quite speculative. There's not really many hard numbers, but I found, just with some cursory internet research, I found an article from TechRadar from back in February that suggested that there was 4.2 million PS5s sold versus 2.8 million Xbox Series X and S's. Xbox Series X's and S's? XS's? And there's still fucking terrible names. So that's still, in spite of everything that Microsoft have been doing, there's still a fuck ton more PlayStation 5s out there than there is equivalent Xboxes. So it could be argued that while Microsoft are putting all this effort in, they're still fucking losing. So maybe Sony aren't being arrogant. Maybe they're being clever and just playing it safe because they know they're winning. They don't really need to do anything. So why would they go out and spend a ridiculous amount of money buying up companies and be like breaking their back to offer such a good deal like Game Pass when they don't fucking need to? People are still buying their console. People are still playing full price for the games on console. And they're still selling more consoles than Xbox. So that's kind of the devil's advocate argument. On one hand, you could look at it and go, what the fuck are you doing, Sony? Are you asleep at the wheel? On the other hand, you can go, well, they're still winning, so clearly they're doing something right. And if you add into that Sony does have some big things in the pipeline, like God of War Ragnarok, the new Horizon game for Forbidden West. So there's an argument that, okay, Xbox and Microsoft might be getting the headlines just now, but in due course, Sony will start releasing stuff about God of War and Horizon, and suddenly everyone will forget that fucking MLB The Show was on Game Pass and it will all be about that again. I thought it was interesting that despite all the sort of good press and stuff that Microsoft have been getting, sales figures of the consoles don't really suggest that the narrative is shifting. There are a couple of potential reasons for this. Obviously, both consoles I think have been more or less sold out from launch, with kind of really limited restocks happening and disappearing really quickly. So it's not as if there is just a massive stock of Xboxes sitting on a shelf that nobody's buying while everybody's going to get PlayStations. So that sales figure, if accurate, could literally just reflect the amount of consoles that both companies have been able to actually get to market. So what you might see is, once consoles come back in stock, then you start seeing the ramifications of all this stuff that Xbox have been doing, and suddenly Xboxes start flying off the shelf quicker than the PlayStations, and that's when they start eating up the ground. That could happen. The other thing I suspect is that, as I talked about, quite a lot of the good stuff that Microsoft's been doing revolves around Game Pass. I'm still not sure that your general consumer actually knows what Game Pass is or realises it's a thing. It's really hard to tell when you're someone like me and presumably you, if you're watching this video, who actually follows the game industry pretty closely and is like a power user, if you like. It's really hard to tell what a kind of normal general consumer does and doesn't understand or is and isn't aware of. So I don't necessarily know, for example, that mum or dad buying a new console for little Timmy, they realise that they're going to end up spending a shit ton more money if they buy him a PlayStation 5, because they're going to have to buy every game that he plays individually. Whereas if they buy an Xbox, they can just pay a subscription service and they'll save a shit ton of money. I'm not quite sure Game Pass is out there to that extent yet. What you might see, again, once consoles come back into stock and things progress, is that eventually the sort of general consumer becomes more educated, and so again you could in due course see Microsoft start to eat into Sony's lead a little bit. Personally, as I say, my view is that I'm finding it increasingly more difficult to justify paying full price for games that are on Game Pass, and I'm seriously considering investing in an Xbox if I can get my hands on one, to be perfectly honest. And for me, I think if I was Sony, I'd be seriously considering doing something to shake it up a little bit. I know they've potentially got some big things coming, like we've talked about, but for me, I think they're just getting trounced a little bit too much at the moment. I think they need to start considering about coming up with a serious competitor to Game Pass, because PlayStation Now just doesn't cut it. I mean, I talked about being a power user and someone who actually follows games. Even I barely know what fucking PlayStation Now is. I have zero interest in it. So I think they need to start thinking about an actual serious competitor to Game Pass. For now, I think they're probably biding their time to see what happens, because as I say, I think the sales figures are probably not a true reflection at this moment in time of what the actual market share in the industry looks like. So I think they'll probably bide their time, wait until consoles can be supplied properly again, and see what happens. If Microsoft do start really eating into that lead, they might shake things up a little bit, or if not, they'll probably just continue as they're doing at the minute. As I say, I think the key period will be when consoles come back into stock, and we'll really get to see the impact that all this stuff has or hasn't had. So yeah, I'll be keen to keep an eye on it, and probably make some more videos on it in the future. So that's me for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please don't forget to smack that like button. I said I would never fucking say that, and I just did. I'm so disappointed in myself. And don't forget to hit subscribe as well. If you've any comments, questions, please leave them below and I'll do my best to answer. Or you can catch me live every Monday, Wednesday? I don't know what days are anymore. Every Monday, Wednesday and Friday over at twitch.tv/GrahamPlays. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at GrahamPlays as well. And I will catch you guys next time. Bye.